Welcome to Beyond Transcendence with Andrew. I'm your host, Andrew Wilson. On today's show, I have Bjorn Lestrude. Bjorn is a sound healer and founder of Blue Dragon Healing. His journey has been deeply shaped by ancient shamanic traditions and personal experiences with plant medicines, which helped him to reconnect with his true self. Now, through sound therapy and holistic practices, he helps others to do the same, guiding them toward emotional clarity, spiritual growth, and authentic self-expression. Please welcome Bjorn. Welcome to the show, Bjorn.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So tell me about your spiritual healing journey.
Well, that's a lot of information. Talk about where a lot of it began, at least on the shamanic side of things. So I had been traveling around the world for 5 years or so, living in about 15 different countries, and been developing some health issues in the body. My knees were getting really stiff to the point where, and for about 2 years, to the point where anytime I was sitting down for more than a couple of minutes, I'd have to straighten my legs out just to relieve the tension that was in them. And I had high blood pressure, some other things too. And so a friend of mine had mentioned that he was going down to Tulum, and I hadn't been there, and it was on my bucket list, and it happened to be peak COVID at the time, and that was one of the few places that I could go which had fewer restrictions for living, and that's where I kind of wanted to be. So I went down there. I didn't have any expectation about getting into shamanic practices or anything like that. And so I got there, and my friend, the one that invited me down, he had an accident with his big toe, and it was really, really black and blue. It was to the point where pretty much everyone who saw that would look at him and say, your toenail's going to fall off, right? Because it was black. So I had just seen him a couple of days prior, and he came up to me one day and he said, "Look at my toe." And I looked, and it was completely normal. 2 days ago, it was black. All of a sudden, the coloration's totally normal. I mean, it's white, or the color a toenail should be. I said, "How did that happen?" And he said, "I went to this ceremony, called the Light Portal, and had a release, and it happened." And so naturally, I was curious about that. So I wanted to go, and I went to this thing, and the Light Portal is like a group ceremony that combines a multitude of different energy healings and traditions in one sort of melting pot of situation, very dynamic. So there was biodynamic breath work. Like there were 15 to 20 of us lined up around the outside of the room. It's kind of a circular room, and they led us through this biodynamic breath work where you're combining movement with like strong breathing, and I think they threw in some qigong moves. And then after had us all lay down on our backs while continuing the breathing, and they were having their 4 facilitators going around the room doing physical body work on the participants, like deep like organ release type of work, and there was drumming going on, chanting, other things. And so at one point, one of the facilitators, this woman from this like ancient Muslim lineage, came up to me and started working on me and digging into my legs, and it hurt a lot, the work she was doing. But then after, I started laughing, and I was laying there, and when she left, and it was like a laughter that was really from like that deep space within me, that is almost like a sense of detachment of the I and the myself. experience. So I thought, well, there's something here that I should explore more. So I arranged to do a private session with two of the facilitators there. And one of them was the woman that had come up to me and worked on me, and then her partner, Jose. And so they came to my apartment and she worked on me for like an hour and a half, just digging into different parts of my body. For like an hour and a half, she was doing this, and it was very, very physically painful. And then when she finished, the three of us sat in a little group and talked about what she perceived or interpreted from what she had just done. She would say things like, on your father's side there was this fear and anger, and on your mother's side there was this, and I saw this, jaguar spirit guide and this shaman spirit guide, and gave me some information. And then the last part of it, the experience was then her partner served me hape. Are you familiar with what that is?
No, I'm not. What is that?
Hape is, it's a tobacco-based thing, but it's also psychoactive in the sense that they make it in like very different indigenous traditions by the Amazon make it in a lot of different ways, but usually they combine different elements. A lot of times there's like the bark from a sunu tree and maybe something else, maybe the ashes from a ceremonial fire. It just depends. But you take it through the nose, so you can either use a self-applicator. Some people serve it to themselves, like here's, for example, a karipi. So you would blow it, but in a ceremonial setting, there's what's called a tepe. So one person is blowing it into the other person's nose. So he served me this medicine,
Cool.
and then he stood behind me with a couple of maracas and he started shaking them in my ears. So I couldn't. There was too much noise or my mind was not able to think. And then he's standing there with the maracas and he starts making these chanting sounds. And the next thing I know, I'm starting to make a chanting myself, but it was very uncomfortable. It was like this energy is just very like powerful energy. It was like moving through me and carrying something. It felt like I was carrying the weight of the world through my body, and couldn't stop. And after the chant, I just got down on the ground and was sick, for several hours. I threw up and all kinds of things, and I was just laid on the ground. I didn't even want to get up on the couch and lay down. But the next morning, when I woke up, I noticed that all of the pain in my knees was gone, and that had been bothering me for 2 years, just gone, never came back since then. So that was kind of the beginning for me. Went through so many things after that, but as a starting point for your question,
It sounds like you had a wonderful experience, and it sounds like you were purging. Like your body
a
was
lot.
pushing out a lot of poison and toxins by the sounds of it.
Oh, yes,
Does it
very
burn when
dense.
it goes up the nose?
It can. It just depends. I've done it a number of times since. Sometimes I barely would feel it, and other times it would burn like a son of a gun. It seems like it all largely has to do a lot with, is there something that needs to be worked on right now in me? And if there is, then it burns more.
Okay, so if you need to heal, then it's gonna hurt, but if you don't need to heal, then it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me because like I've always found that any stage of energy healing always starts with pain. And it's like you know if I allow myself to feel the pain, then it creates an opening for something else to come in, and then I have an experience, maybe a peak experience or something. But then for me, peak experiences are always the beginning of a healing process, not the end of one. I know a lot of people who are constantly chasing the next peak experience, but then they never learn how to embody it and ground it and integrate it into like real living. Having those experiences, feeling the pain, having those experiences is wonderful. And then learning how to work with that and make something of it, a whole other thing.
So that brought on the sound healing. Was it a journey? Did you go like into a trance of some form of, or did spirit guides talk to you to create this wonderful healing? Because I listened to it. It's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
You're very
All
welcome.
of the above.
Okay.
So it started with just that private session, and the sounds that were coming out of me weren't really very musical at the time. It was just an exercise of, well, I guess you could call it energetic stretching in a way, and then exploring through a multitude of different healing modalities and practices, and then going through some ayahuasca journeys and working with a medicine called Bufo. It was a session with Bufo that created a real opening for my voice. I mean, it was already progressing. I was getting asked to like do chants at some of the different ceremonies around the area. But then when I went in one day to do a Bufo experience, so for those who don't know, it's Bufo is have you ever heard of the thing that people take that's like secreted from a toad? And
Yeah, I've heard about that.
you take it, and they did a Simpsons episode on it once. People were like licking toads. You smoke it. So there were two facilitators. They served me and told me to inhale, and then said, so when as soon as you finish the inhale at the very top of the breath, just throw your arms up in the air like that, like so, and I'll back up a little bit, and then just fall back onto the mattress that's set up behind you. So I did that, and as I was laying there, just in complete trance, relaxed bliss, right, just feeling amazing, I started feeling this very intense pressure on the center of my forehead, like someone was digging a fingernail in there, and then I experienced this. What I saw was this explosion of blue light everywhere, and then a song just passed through me and erupted into the room, and so I'm laying there like completely tranced out, yet there's a song that I'm singing, and with this song it opened up different vocal ranges in my voice that I had not experienced as an adult, highs, lows, and that has stayed with me. I mean, it took some practice. It's taken a lot of practice over time to integrate that and learn how to do it without medicine and all of that. But and so it's kind of been learning that when I go through and I have different types of experiences, peak moments, whatever it is, that the way I integrate it is through the singing that I do. And so I may have an experience and then I go back to my practice, and then at some point something new appears in my voice that wasn't there before.
So it sounds like you're unlocking each time you do it. You're unlocking something new. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, that's a way of looking at it. Sure.
Cool. What is ayahuasca like? Because I hear about it from so many people, but I've never tried ayahuasca. I hope to try ayahuasca in this lifetime. Maybe the next one. We'll see what happens.
Well, it makes, for one, a big difference on who's facilitating the ceremony because, well, I've sat with shamans from a few different lineages. The Yawanawa, the Hunikun, and the Shipibo are the main three. All very different. And in all cases, they use medicine songs throughout the ceremony to work with the medicine that people have taken. So with the Yawanawa and the Hunikun, they have traditional songs and chants that they use during the ceremony that have been practiced and sung many times. And with the Shipibo, very, very different. They do what are known as ikaros. So instead of having a very specific song, what they do is they open up a connection to the medicine that they take, and then they channel a unique song or channel unique songs based on the medicine, what it's communicating to them, and what the people in the ceremony need energetically. And they're constantly improvising as they go. So very, very different. I really enjoyed the latter, the Shipibo, probably the most. How do I explain how I felt on medicine? Because everyone seemed to be a little bit different. I mean, there are commonalities because it does certain things to the body, helps to, open the heart and do things. I just found it to be very, very peaceful and soothing. Not everyone feels that way about it. But that's how it was for me because a lot of my experience was that it took me out of my mind into my body and allowed me to really feel my essence in a way that I hadn't experienced it before. And I got to meet my guides. I saw many of my guides and felt their energy. And it was a great time in my life, a wonderful exploration. I did it maybe 20 times altogether.
Sounds like a beautiful spiritual awakening. What were your guides like?
So my primary guide is a blue dragon, and they're sort of like my guardian. And when I do my singing, chanting, they're kind of like the conductor that facilitates the whole song. And so different energies come in and different voices, and they're kind of running the show, but there are different energies coming through. But when I sat in ceremony, I met hundreds of guides, a lot of dragons, which I loved because they have a sense of humor and they're really joyful. But there was one time when I was, it was my first Shipibo experience with ayahuasca. And at one point, I looked out into the room and I saw this parade of guides like moving across the room, like through the air, like in a lineup. They were my guides. I didn't know it, didn't realize it at the time, like showing themselves to me, but such detail. And there was one, he's like a Hawaiian deity, Kanaloa, and my God, it was such an intense image. And then he like showed himself, and then he stepped into this chamber and shut the chamber door, and this green like smoke appeared on the door. It was so cool. My most closest guides is a Native American shaman. They work a lot with me to help me understand and use my spiritual sight and improve on that. Yeah. Oh, it was a wonderful time.
Beautiful. So, what kind of healing has your blue sound dragon or blue dragon?
Right. So a lot of people, they have tried different healing modalities and they struggle to really go into a deeper space with it. And so people tell me, it helped them create an opening to experience their energy in a different way. And it's manifested in a number of ways in the integration where like people would say, I was really having a hard time being very triggered by other people. And then this helped them stay centered and not and stay within their own boundary and not feel so reactive to what other people were doing. Then there's someone that, for example, that said they went into the session, they were looking for clarity on their business, and then they got that, but then they also ended up finding a deep appreciation and patience for their partner that they didn't expect, and they were very grateful for. I had one guy, he said he'd never been able to meditate before. And so after the experience, the following months, he started carrying around a notebook and just filling it up with all of this sacred geometry and drawings of all kinds of things. It was just like really detailed, like cool stuff.
You got him to tap into his spirituality by the sounds of it. That's
Yeah, it's
cool.
like embodied spirituality. bringing the connection in and then facilitating a process to bring it into the physical so that people can actually use it.
So what do you do in your sessions?
Sure. So some things I do are group work. I do events on Insight Timer, usually at least once a week, barring a holiday and whatnot. And in a typical group session, I have my buffalo drum, and I'm using that, and then that kind of creates a grounding effect and keeps people from floating away too far. And so it's like some singing, some drumming. I use tuning forks as well. I have some solfeggio tuning forks that I use usually at the beginning and the end of a session to bring in some other frequencies into the experience. And maracas I use at a particular point when we're going to transition from clearing blocks and foundational things to bringing in a resolution. The maracas are sort of the contrapoint to transition and start bringing people back into their bodies, I guess you could refer to it. But like on a one-on-one type of level, especially for like an introductory type of a session, what I'm doing a lot of is really focusing on we'll call it the battery terminals of the body. So the Earth Star and Sun Star chakras, Sun Star being like right above the crown and Earth Star being below the feet. And I do a lot to, first of all, make sure that they haven't condensed and moved too close to the body, because that happens a lot in modern life with the stress. So I move them into their natural position and then work on clearing the signal from one to the other. And that has an effect really of just helping the person's body calibrate all of the bigger things that need to happen in that time. So a session like that is not as much of to traditional chanting, but more of a foundational work with some chanting at the end. But I always enjoy it.
That's cool. Do you do these sessions in person or can they be done virtual as well?
I do most of my work virtually. I prefer it that way, being that I'm not really using touch and everything happens in the quantum field anyways. It works better for me that way. And besides that, it just seems like the type of people who are most interested in this type of work tend to be kind of spread out, not living in one particular area. So I enjoy just connecting with people and doing things online and enjoying it. Not that I don't do in person. I've done before. Actually, when I was living down in Tulum, I did a bunch of in-person things, but the online is fun and just as powerful.
Cool. So what does one of these sessions cost? Like, can someone afford this? That's
So
just an everyday working person?
an intro session is 149, so I don't think it's too bad.
No, that's good. So what are you hoping to do with your practice? What's your overall objective for your practice?
Well, I've been developing a program called Primal Path, and the whole purpose of it really is to bring a person from feeling like they need other people's healing to center to learning how to bring out their own healing expression so that they can heal themselves and learn how to do that. And then to take it a step further for some people and allow them to not only learn how to do that, but then to create like a product and prepare that for bringing it out and sharing it with other people. And so I kind of look at it as PATH, path. Feeling your pain, experiencing an awakening, going through transformation, and sharing your heritage. And it's not a linear thing because these things all happen all the time in different ways, right? But it's a way of thinking of things that sort of separates some of the essential elements.
That sounds beautiful. I like that.
Thank you.
So, what advice can you give my audience or people that are struggling right now? Like, what is something they can dive into if they can't get in touch with you? What could you offer them?
Sure, I provide a few free resources on my website. bluedragonhealing.net. And there I have a podcast with some healings built in. I have a few downloads of myself and some other guest healers so they can experience a couple of different modalities. There's a link to my Insight Timer profile, and Insight Timer is a wellness app, and there's many different teachers on there offering different modalities, and people can experience go on live events and experience many of them for free. And then I have a membership that's like $10 a month that just gives people access to my full content library and that I'm constantly adding to as well. And so then that gives them something they can use like on demand, where it's like you wake up or you're not feeling quite right, or you've got some time during the day and you want to decompress. They can just pop on their headphones and have something to listen to help bring them back.
That's amazing. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, Bjorn. I'm so grateful to have met you, and I hope you have the wonderful rest of your day.
Well, thanks, Andrew.
Take
Nice
care.
to be here.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that show today. It's a good message to know that through sound we can heal ourselves, and to know that there are ancient indigenous traditions that we are not aware of. So it was a very informative podcast with Bjorn. He brought a lot of wonderful knowledge and wisdom that can connect us with the indigenous tribes about learning through plant medicine. And if you don't like to learn through plant medicine, you can learn through ceremonial music, and it'll provide a spiritual enlightening, also a form of healing. So I hope you enjoyed this show. Once again, I leave my email, btwa2024@gmail.com. Check out the videos on the YouTube channel, Beyond Transcendence with Andrew. As well, we have Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you could kindly leave a review, I'd greatly appreciate it. Much love to all of you. Bye.